Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of StarSound Speaks. This is your host, Irlianna, episode 111, 111. And I'm so excited because Michael Bartlett's back. Hello, Michael. Yay. So I figured, I'd like to talk about today is, I had mentioned a little bit about that in the previous video, the Mars and Saturn opposition, but now we're getting into that square. So Mars is opposing Saturn, but Uranus is in the mix as well. And so Mars, Saturn, and Uranus making a square over the first 3 days of July where it will perfect. And that's deep. And these are major planets. So I'm really grateful. Thank you, Michael, for coming on. And I'd love to hear, what your feelings are, because I know for me, I've got a little bit of trepidation going, okay, these are big boys and all squaring off. But maybe today what we can focus on is, what that might look like, the high road and the low road, if those energies aren't handled powerfully, what that might look like, but also what the high road is. Because so many of us, we worry and dwell on the negative and we don't realize there's this huge opportunity there. So I want to make sure everybody's really mindful of that, So anyway, I would just love to hear what you have to say about that. But meantime, you've been teaching at Stormy Grace's Academy. And how's that been going?
It's been so exciting. And I just love what she's doing and teaching and reaching out. I got to do retrograde planets and Mercury just as a planet on its own. So I got to do 2 classes, which I really love. Hopefully I'll get to be involved with the next stage she's going to be doing for this next year. Just a wonderful undertaking. So, and thanks for having me on once again, of course.
Yeah, and so we just came out of Mercury retrograde, so it was very timely. That I'm just wondering what are some of the things that you gave people, like takeaways for, because how everybody just loves to make fun of all those memes on the internet. Mercury retrograde.
We do. Well, I mean, I always think of any of the retrogrades as like using the RE, any of the words that begin with RE, like retreat, relax, regroup, reconnect. I just find that way. And when it is retrograde, we enter into more of a liminal space, right? We're like connecting in with this space of going into places we're not usually normally doing. And so Mercury's usually got full on, got the pedal to the metal, ready to go, whatever. But when Mercury's retrograde, Mercury has just kind of like, I call it the moonwalk or the Hermes backwards dance.
I love it.
Because it's like this opportunity to review. It's like, are we sure we want to do this? And what I find really particularly interesting about this period, and it leads into this square, I believe, is that Mercury rules 2 of the mutable signs. It rules Gemini and Virgo, as you know. And then Jupiter, that just went retrograde the other day, rules the other 2 mutable signs, Sagittarius and Pisces. So here already, the mutable signs are already being told also, hey, you guys and gals and everyone in between.
Non-binary and everyone.
Non-binary, exactly. I don't want to exclude anyone because Jupiter's not about excluding anyone, of course.
Right.
It's like, hey, time to reconsider, time to do things, to do things in a very different way. And I think many of us are making different decisions. I mean, like today, the justice decision, the other day with the NCAA, with the Supreme Court, and saying, hey, it's these college age individuals deserve to get paid, these high school individuals, so that they get to be covered. They're not being taken advantage of by this larger system. And then the woman who talked about something on one of her social media pages, and the school expelled her, and they took it away, her First Amendment rights. It's nice to see. It's like while these things are going retrograde, that there is this forward movement going on of the truth being revealed. And I think as these other outer planets continue to go retrograde, and then this square, like you said, that's happening July 1st. The one good thing I can say about this square is they are the rulers of Aquarius, and Saturn is in Aquarius.
Right.
So in that sense, it's really nice because there's an inherent understanding in that. And Aquarians understand this, but a lot of modern astrologists would say, hey, Saturn doesn't rule Aquarius. But you ask any Aquarian, they kind of understand that they kind of have to do their homework. They have to do the right thing, because Aquarius is about right human relationship and
Yep.
making sure that that it's like, I don't know, like kind of my thing is, I'm an Aquarian myself, so I can own this. Is getting home and doing whatever work that needs to get done, and then being able to enjoy myself, doing the Saturnian thing so that I can actually go and do the Uranian thing of getting to have play or getting to introduce something new. And so this is in a what is this? This is in an opening square, right?
Hmm.
Uranus to Saturn. Yeah. So it's an opening square.
Hmm.
So it's a crisis in consciousness, right? It's that we didn't, a crisis in action. Sorry, that's the third quarter is crisis in consciousness. First quarter is consciousness, crisis in action. And so it's this part of are we doing the right things? I think part of it, Chauvin getting sentenced today to 22 and a half years. I mean, just literally moments ago, for don't ask for whom the bell doth toll. And it's like kind of like the image that comes up for me. It's like, there's a reconciliation that is starting to happen now, and it's happening with race, it's happening with sex, it's happening with poverty versus the wealthy. It's all these different things that are inequalities and the ways that we've somehow in society normalized them.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's time that the Pied Piper, it's time that the piper gets paid its due. It's time that people start getting reconciled. It's time that that women's work gets valued at the same level as men's work. It's time that people of color receive the same pay and the same respect as people who are of non-color. I don't know. But it's kind of a funny thing. We're all spectrum, right? Along the spectrum colors. Some of us are more colorful than others, which is really beautiful. But but how do we allow and accept the fact that we're all living along the spectrum of humanity, as opposed to just going, oh, this is the special group, or I'm the special group, or anything that separates ourselves.
Separates.
I think with Saturn and Uranus, it's like this. What Aquarians understand that Leo has the luxury of is ego, right? Leo is like, oh, the world is mine, look at me, I'm wonderful, and Aquarius is looking across the way going, I don't really like that. I don't want to be that, but I have a message that needs to be said, just like the Leo has the message to be said. The higher Leo, of course, is sharing that from the heart, radiating from the heart and the warmth and the love.
Right.
And when Aquarius can bring that in, because Aquarius is also cold air, right?
Right.
So it kind of really needs that warmth over there from Leo, bringing like, hey, warm me up a little bit over here. I need to know what it feels like to be a me, right? That's what Leo gives Aquarius, because Aquarius is like, what's me?
Yeah. I only know we. It's like,
So Saturn and Uranus, in that square, and then plus it's that square in that Uranus is in Taurus, so these are fixed signs, our fixed ideas, our fixed values, our fixed understandings about people, realizing how deep that even just in our languaging, or in our language structure, and the way we speak to one another, that there are inherent ways that it puts people in certain places,
yeah. And then
right?
so much of that has been unconscious, and like, like the fish swimming in dirty water and it doesn't know.
I love the fishbowl scenario, because it's almost like what I want to do is like, and I get goosebumps as I say this, but like I want to like take like 5 or 6 different fishbowls, and maybe I'll have to do it like visually, as a meme or something, and put like um, being white, being black, being Jewish, being Muslim, being Catholic. It's like all these little fishbowls that we don't understand that we're in, being female, being male. We don't understand that these are all different frames of reference of being, and that each of them has value.
Being non-binary, being, yeah, all, yeah.
And yeah, maybe that's the
That's a
beautiful
newer
thing
one.
about one of the beautiful things about the non-binary, because I think what astrology teaches us is the beauty that we're each a snapshot of the universe, And therefore, how can any snapshot be not okay?
Yeah. How can there be a right snapshot? You
Right.
know, like, and if that something's right, then something else is wrong, you know, to put this into this duality matrix. And yeah.
And so
What I
that
loved
Saturn
about,
Uranus,
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, what I realized, you know, with coming out of this eclipse season with the eclipse axis in the information axis, Gemini and Sag, it's like all the stories we've had that have been unconsciously running us. And it's like, wow, you know, time for that to, you know, end that chapter, like you said about, and then Sagittarius being unity consciousness and the falling in the South Node, the falling away of belief systems that have not really unified us, or, you know, yeah.
Well, they've unified certain groups, right? And
Right.
those groups who have held the power have felt that unity. And what's happening now is some of those groups are starting to feel that power slip away because they're understanding that we are a lot more diverse and the importance of all of us speaking up from that space.
Yeah.
If anyone has any question about that, just go to YouTube, like here, and just look at, I mean, what do you want to learn? What do you want to see? What do you want to experience? I mean, there is someone on there giving an opinion or a viewpoint about everything and anything in life now. I mean, it's really kind of wonderful. I mean, you can be in podunk anywhere, and just as long as you have internet access, you can click in. It's so Aquarian, and get to find out, you know, hey, this is what another person maybe thinks about, or what another person sees, and like, oh, does that work for me? Does it not? Because I think that's the other thing that kind of comes in is like crisis in action is like having moved forward with something, with an idea, and then having to take two steps back and making sure that that idea is really what one wants to continue with as it goes through the remaining 3/4 of its cycle.
Especially when you're dealing with Saturn, it's like, okay, be careful, because, you know, the things, this is about a lasting legacy, and that we're aware of a larger picture, like what decisions we're making now and the progress and the choices that we as a society are making are going to have a long lasting impact. You know, it's like when Saturn's going to come around 27 years from now in this sign. So it's, yeah, that's big.
And sorry, I just want to correct. I knew something was really nagging me in the back of my head. It's actually at the 3rd quarter square, because that's Saturn and Uranus. So this is now, you know, Saturn will in another 6-7 years or so will complete its cycle and move up to Uranus in Taurus.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah.
That's actually, in fact, crisis in consciousness, what I started to say before. And so that is the, oh, I didn't know that I didn't know.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
And
huge.
so that, to be honest, and it's, and actually in a way I really like, so here's Mercury retrograde, like you said, you know, you and I had technical difficulties, you know, getting on and everything today, because it's like Mercury is still in that stationing point, you know, it's still
16.
in
Yeah.
that spot. So it's like, you know, here's another thing. So it's nice to correct it. It's like it didn't make as much sense as far as moving forward, but it's like from a state of we didn't know, it's exactly what we were just talking about, is like coming to understand the languaging, kind of understanding, you know, like history, you know, his story as opposed to her story or our story,
Or
you
their
know.
story. All story, right?
Or there was something I was thinking about, like the New Age movement, I think should be called the You-ish movement, you know, because there's this thing that's about like how people kind of aggrandize the self in an oddly interesting way that's cloaked in spirituality, but hasn't really maybe done the grounding work that needs to be done. And so I think that's what these good things with Uranus and Saturn together kind of coming in, like, oh, you know, it's like that ego knock at the door, like, oh, you thought this, you thought that. Well, guess again. It's not
Yeah,
how you considered it. You know, you know, it's, you can't, Saturn in this position, there aren't any skip steps, right? And they're
right.
father and son.
And then what was that? Sorry.
They're father and son.
Oh, right, right.
The
Yeah,
history of
Saturn,
Uranus,
Uranus.
the great sky god who devoured his sons because of the old prophecy. And then Saturn did the same thing. He devoured his sons until Zeus came along. So, you know, this very ancient, like, what needs to be disgorged? Because
Right.
that's the other thing with Saturn and Uranus. There's something that's been swallowed, like we've all been swallowing the BS for centuries, right?
Mhm.
And for women, millennia.
Yeah, that's a
And
big pain
time,
body to dismantle,
it's
and to
time to
disgorge.
throw it up and throw it out. And then, from those pieces that are released, what is it that can be? Because what Aquarius seeks to do is to build upon that which came before in a way that is more we oriented, is more inclusive, and has possibilities rather than restrictions.
Right, right. Yeah, I love it.
So we've got that, and then we've got, Jupiter and Neptune are doing retrograde in Pisces. Um,
Right.
Saturn in its native sign. I mean, it's just all these like very interesting reworkings on almost like a fundamental level is kind of like how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, all the outer planets being rich, and then Uranus is going to start. It's not quite at the stationing retrograde point is 14 degrees, and I think it's at 13 right now, but it will shortly be at that stationing point, and that'll go retrograde in the middle of August. So then we'll have all these outer planets retrograde, and that's a lot of revamping, and
Until
yeah.
October. How are you noticing it? What are you seeing and hearing with people?
With what the just in general, just the Saturn, the Uranus.
Just all of the, I mean, it's really almost too much to grok at one time in a sense, because it's like it's coming at us all from so many different areas in our charts. I mean,
Yeah,
we're basically seeing, like a whole frequency, from what is it? It's still this hemispheric focus, from Capricorn to Leo,
yeah.
as far as the planets are concerned. So, from the last 3 signs and the first 5 signs, so
Well,
8 signs.
yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the 8 signs of the zodiac are really being activated. So most people are having some sort of an energetic activation in their charts right now.
Right, crisis opportunity. It kind of reminds me, as we're talking about this, Michael. It's like it almost feels like, and I'm definitely old enough to remember the 60s and the 70s. But in the late 60s, when things were just really torn up and, torn and shredded. And this, even though this Mars T square is obviously just, it's short lived with Mars there, but the energy of the next 2 weeks, it just feels like it's calling up. It's just so big, like you said, it's so vast, and it's hard to talk about this in one podcast, because it's so deep and so layered. The Uranian archetype, the Saturn, and then Mars coming, all 3 of them, and how they're, conflicting and battling it out with each other. But it does feel a little bit like that. I don't know, just intuitively, that's what it just feels like, where people didn't even know themselves. Mars, that personal identity, squaring with what is good for society, and what maybe I need to sacrifice some of my own, not like free will, but to be cognizant of a larger truth that of contribution. So it's really huge, and it defines us for years and years to come, just like it did in the 60s, where I remember how torn up people were. It's like the beaver cleaver life of the early 60s was just like shredded, and it left many of us feeling, in the years afterward, it was like, wow, what just happened? So anyway, that's just what's coming up for me right now.
No, it's so true. And then, with Mars there in Leo, it's a very much of like, my will, in that placement. And Venus is right there too. So it's really challenging. So it's asking us to go over there into Scorpio, really, right? To kind of ground somehow. So, the important part will be when the moon hits that point, and kind of holds that point forever. And or for those of us who have planets in Scorpio, it's like, it's going to be holding a lot for people, because it'll be like kind of like the dumping ground for that T square, right?
Oh gosh, I didn't
Oh
even
my
check.
gosh.
When's the moon in Scorpio? I didn't even
Let me take a
gotta
look.
look that one up.
Yeah.
The dumping ground. Yeah. Talk about um the soap opera we were saying earlier. It's almost like as the ecliptic turns, you know,
Right.
the latest soap opera. And then, so the moon in Scorpio.
Well, it's actually, let's see, when was it? June 21st was when we had kind of a little, well, no, it would have been a couple of days before that. Well, because Mars is back in there, I see. Like it doesn't really, it does, the Mars moves on quite a bit before it, before the
Before
moon
the moon
gets
comes
back.
back.
And yeah, the moon gets there again in July 18th, and that puts Mars already at 22 degrees, and
Past
that's
it.
11 degrees off Saturn.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be felt,
Yeah.
but it's just good to realize, you know, usually, I don't know if you find, but whenever I see those like T squares, it's always asking for like that fourth point to be kind of grounded out.
Yes. Yes. I remember my one of my first teachers told me that the T square, he always likened it to a three-legged table when you have a T square. And he said, you know, that fourth leg is missing. And so you can't have a functioning table if, you know, it collapses. You can't put anything on the table. And you got to look to see, you know, what's that missing leg and what degree or degrees. And, you know, so it's Scorpio, you know, with this T square. That fourth leg is, you know, what, 11 or 12, 13 degrees Scorpio. And it's like, wow, you know, anybody got a planet there? Right in, you know, let us know. Woo!
Or an
But
angle, you know, something
or
like
an
that.
angle.
You'll be feeling it. It'll be, you know, it'll feel like quite a pressure.
Yeah, like a pressure
You
cooker.
know, I think what's nice with Scorpio, especially if one's been doing their scorpionic work, is just being open to what gets presented and helping people process and helping yourself process. Because that's what's, I mean, my favorite thing to always say to a Scorpio, you know, in a reading, when people have any kind of scorpionic planets and they're either not sure about it or they didn't know, is like, oh, do you ever have people kind of like talk to you for a bit and afterwards go like, wow, I've never shared anything like that with anyone before.
Right? It's always been
You're like,
in.
oh my God, all the time.
Right? Yeah,
So,
yeah. So even if we don't have a planet or at that point in sign, or by an angle, it's just the consciousness of bringing in that Scorpio influence to be that fourth leg. I think it's a really important point. I'm glad you're making that today, because that definitely is that's essential.
yeah. And that another part that goes along with it again is disgorging. I mean, one thing that Scorpio's really good at kind of stuffing it. Cancer will continue to hold on to things, but Scorpio kind of will explode if it
Yeah,
doesn't, right? Because the key
very.
with Scorpio is accepting the cycle of life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, and getting to the point of neutrality around it. So it's like understanding that, you know, stuff happens. I'm not going to use the other word because I always forget like what's okay and what's not, but stuff happens, and Scorpio is a lot less constipated when it allows stuff to happen. And
Right.
so that's the role that Scorpio plays for us. There's the sign Scorpio somewhere in everyone's chart. So wherever house that plays a role in your own personal chart too, it's like that's the area that, you know, you might consider, you know, kind of clearing some things out, you know, in that part of life. Might be relationships with other people, might be work, might be, I mean, everything is just so up from now to October. I just want to encourage everyone just to um, accept that everything isn't necessarily so.
Yeah. It ain't necessarily so. Wasn't that it's like Porgy and Bess or something, right? That's a good.
And then my other favorite that goes along with it is the you know, to the tune of there's no business like show business. There's no delusion like self-delusion. There's no delusion, I know.
You
And
made a
this
song out of it.
period, I think, is really about pushing away the aside, you know, with all that retrograde Pisces, the Neptune, the Jupiter, the outer planets, like pulling the veil, pushing the veil aside and just like going, what is the truth? Who am I in relationship to all of that? And how do I want to be? And what new contracts do I want to make going forward in my life? We
Yeah,
all
and with Neptune retrograde is like, oh, you know, the dreams I have, the visions I have, you know, let me step back and it's like, what's truly, you know, crazy pie in the sky versus what is a vision that can be manifested, that can be real, and workable, rather than, or getting deluded by a fantasy world and illusional thinking. And I love that. Can you say that, sing it for us again, that there's no
There's
illusion
no delusion like self-delusion. There's no delusion, I know.
Come on with the rest of the lyrics and we'll make
Now I
it.
got to come out with the rest of it. Well,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the truth is, it's about the story we tell, and Jupiter's also there, and Jupiter's a grand, Zeus is a grand storyteller, so it's like, it's an opportunity for us all to choose a new story.
yeah,
And why not choose a grand story for yourself? Why not choose a story that aligns with you in a way that makes you feel good, and start saying no to the people in your life that don't see you, don't appreciate you, don't honor you, and
yeah,
begin to nurture. I think we all need to really start seeing life in a different way than it has been for our ancestors.
yeah, yeah. And with Zeus, Jupiter, you think about, what's a story that's going to expand my consciousness, that it'll bring me into my higher self, my expanded sense of self. Yeah. And with hope and confidence and optimism and, all those wonderful Jupiterian traits, yeah, it's all there. It's like, what are we going to pick? What's it going to be, as because we get to pick.
And like, I like what you were saying earlier, because it is like part of it, part of Pisces is magical thinking, right? But with Jupiter and Neptune being going retrograde, it's like, okay, yeah, it's magical thinking, but is it possible? Is it plausible? Can I make it happen? Or is it really, like you said, pie in the sky? And that's, I think, because a lot of us will sit in this kind of like, in fact, a lot of people are kind of having like a little bit of a rude awakening after last year and a half of getting paid unemployment. And now going, wow, I have to actually go back, deal with people, and make less than what I was getting on unemployment. That's one of those things like, well, did I take this last year and a half to build a skill? This would have been Saturn being at work, building a skill, doing social media, or doing something that when this is over, I don't have to go back to that job that I really don't like doing.
Right. And I've been noticing in the news, they were saying how a lot of these people coming back to work now, it's really been a big realization with that year, this last 12, 15 months, because a lot of people are ditching. They're having a huge crisis and hiring help at these like low paying retail, like dollar store type jobs, because people are like, what the heck with that? I'm tired of being a slave, and I'm gonna, I'm moving on, and I'm gonna get a better paying job. And I think about last year's lunar eclipse. It was 8 degrees of Gemini, and that was conjunct the Uranus of the US chart. And now it depends, some people are Sibley fans, and other people are like, oh, 8 degrees Scorpio for the rising of the US chart. As we know, it's divination, so there's truth everywhere. But if you look at, just for example, the Sibley chart, that occurred in the 6th house, the workforce. So I can see that Uranus is like, hey man, dude, I'm out of here. I'm not going to be a slave anymore to these wages, and I'm going to get a high paying tech job, right? Uranus, and work from home, or go into IT, or so it's already this huge sea change happening.
Yeah, when you think about it in a way too, it's almost like this shift, because those of us who were born in the mid 60s with Uranus in Virgo, also were the generation where we're doing this very different kind of a work kind of a thing. So of course it makes sense that as it progresses into the returns for it into the US chart, it's the time for us to like reevaluate how we're doing. I mean, brick and mortar is expensive,
Yeah,
right?
it
Real estate
is.
is expensive. I mean, so here's another aspect of Uranus and Taurus. The forms of things are being reevaluated. What now is going to happen to all this? The malls across the country, are we going to use this for homeless, housing the homeless? What are we going to do with these other businesses, these warehouses and things that are no longer going to be needed because we're going about doing our business in a whole new way? And here
Yeah,
we are with the third quarter square again, going like Saturn's going, wait, we have to do it this way. But it's in, this idealistic Aquarian sign. the sun and Aquarius, of course. And it's saying like, hey, well, how can we do a new form that really is going to be beneficial? It'd be nice to see, maybe with this, a new form of food that can come out of this, a new way of like feeding the planet that is easier and less expensive and that uses less water, or a way to get water around the planet in a way that benefits everyone. I don't know, like, I just think, there will probably be some interesting humanitarian oriented ideas that are coming out. And kind of on that idea, what just popped up with me too, because, with Jupiter and Saturn, we're talking about justice and jurisprudence and everything. And here we have the Supreme Court here in the US, which everyone was so afraid that, oh, it's getting stacked on the quote conservative side. And yet these rulings these last few days have actually been very thoughtful
Affirming.
and showing, once again, that there is an energy of that office that holds those individuals, many of them, I'll say, because there are some who hold really strongly to their values in such a way, but are really actually after the greater good and helping people. And I'm really heartened by what I've seen by the Supreme Court decisions this week.
Yeah, like the cheerleader who won her case, that the freedom of speech, and yeah, it's like, wow, so there's hope. And I love the fact that Saturn being retrograde, it's like, oh, let's look at this again. Or the Title IX with transgender students and all. It's like, wait a minute, like, all these conservative states that have conservative political parties that were rolling back protections, and then the federal government steps in and says, hey, you know what, Title IX, sorry, not sorry, you can't go there. And so, yeah, like the rolling back of these, can often be perceived draconian measures, and stepping back and go, wait a minute, maybe we need to adjust this. What is best for society? Where do we want to go in our, there's thunder right now outside my window. So that was the universe is like, yeah.
Well, what I loved, like what the justices said, one of the lines for the ruling with the NCAA was, the court said the NCAA is not above the law.
Ah, okay.
Right? And something about Saturn, Uranus, and Jupiter, the three, the patrilineal lineage is in that, with each one of them was their fate was not understanding or accepting that, right?
Right.
Uranus had to like lose his testicles into
Right.
the Great Sea, and
Astrology.
Saturn got, I think his belly sliced open or something, and his head cut off or something. And Zeus kind of played with it because he shared the power, but also didn't really want to share the power because he really actually did believe he was a little bit above it. But, that's where the collective comes in and says, no, you know what? And that's the interesting thing, this idea of the 99%, maybe that'll come around again, because again, why, when that 99% activism was going on, what's going on now in this time period is those individuals at the 1% have already like almost tripled their wealth again.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, and did you hear that something like 9 people became billionaires as a result of COVID? 9 billionaires. 9. I remember 30 years ago, I remember temping when I lived in New York. I had left my career and I temped at, I think it was, I want to say Fortune magazine. Yeah. And I remember every year they put out like the billionaires list, and there was only like, I don't know, 8 billionaires in the whole planet. I was like, wow, who's the big 8?
And
now
one of them is like Queen Elizabeth. So you go like, oh, okay, I get it,
Yeah, but now it's like, now there's like 100 or so. It's like incredible. It's, yeah, like the rate, the exponential. Yeah, it just has to implode. This is not sustainable, and this is again what these transits are definitely pointing to is, how do you sustain that?
Well, and also I think for a certain set is like, what is enough? Like, why not? I like this idea. There's certain really great ideas that are coming forward. The recent action with Biden and getting the bipartisan thing, but then realizing he's going to put in through like a second system on it, reworking the infrastructure, doing things that are going to help everything. I think there's going to have to be a reworking because why not make it like after you have $1 billion in your bank account, everything else on that is it's 100% taxed. Does an individual need more than $1 billion?
Right. I always say, how many cars can you possibly drive? How much food can you eat? How many garages do you need? It's like,
And there's no trickle down. This idea of the trickle down doesn't happen because, if they did something that was more holistic, like, I mean, here in Santa Fe, what happens a lot is there are people who have their 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 10th homes here, and they come here maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years, or when they're here, they're only here maybe a week out of a year for, opera season or something else that goes on. And so why not allow that, 10,000 square foot home to have the caretaker's studio, have someone live in it year round, so that it's, other people are benefiting from that and your property's being kind of taken care of. I mean, what are these relationships that can be done? I mean, that's what happens a lot around here. I mean, there's so many people whose source of income or their livelihood is actually based on the opportunity of being able to stay in places like that. And so, how do we make these more sustainable, more workable for everyone?
Yeah. I remember when I lived in Sedona, there was a whole neighborhood. This is, going back in the 90s. There was this whole neighborhood. It was something estates, and it was basically a ghost town because there was all these second homes of people who lived in LA, and they might have been, in the entertainment business or something. And like you said, they only visited, if ever, a few days here and there. So it was this weird kind of Twilight Zoney neighborhood. I mean, these beautiful homes, but I remember thinking, there's no way I'd want to live here. There's no community. It's all this second home investment. And it was this ghost town, is this ghost neighborhood. And you never saw, the only people you ever saw were the ones cutting the lawns, like you said. And they were it was just weird. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And that Uranus and Taurus too is like, we're definitely reimagining our living situations. And then, of course, the Biden administration just extended it again for another 30 days as rent moratorium. But that's very disturbing, with that situation of people about to be, thrown out on the street. And oh God, talk about Uranus chaos. And whew, that's
And hard for the landlords too, right? I mean,
right.
if you haven't been paid for a number of months, although most people are getting benefits, but it's there's a lot of this, but I mean, when one source of income is cut off, it's painful. And when the government doesn't allow you to do that,
Yeah,
that's,
it's not easy.
hard, but also too, I'm glad that the individuals are being helped. I mean, there's also incredible help out there. There's a lot of COVID money still out there. So for anyone's watching this right now, if you're behind on your rent and you need help on your rent, please contact your local county, contact your city. There are millions and millions literally of dollars available to help people with their rents, back gas and utility bills, anything that helps with that. So please, there's no reason to be stressed out about it and no reason to put anyone else through the stress.
Oh, thank you for that PSA. That's
Yeah.
good to know. Yes, call 1-800. Yeah. It's all about taking care of each other. We're all in this together. The billionaires that have profited from, what was it, disaster capitalism, that profited from COVID, we're all sharing the same planet. Even though there's a very tiny percentage of them, and then there's the rest of us, it's like we're all sharing it. And there is that mirror too of like, that's us and they're us. And there is no like talk about the breaking up the illusion and that separation.
Well, and then also too, I mean, there are a lot of these special like exclusive enclaves. There are certain like canyons and places on the planet where the wealthy have kind of bought up all the land and kind of created these buffer zones in various states and various countries that where they feel like there's this level of safety. But I mean, someone's got to cook your meals, someone's got to bring you your food, someone's got to grow the food.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Unless they've got all the robots in place, and who knows,
Oh God, those were, I
That's
know.
Uranus and Taurus too, is what I feel is like, the AI explosion. I mean, what, and then also too, I think a little bit of this COVID thing is preparing us for what it's gonna be like when there is much more automation and people aren't working, and how do we support those individuals who aren't working?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine said the other day, who was looking for a job, that I think they said that they were actually, I don't know if that actually happened or it was going to happen, but they were going to get interviewed by AI, by like a robot. Have you heard about? I've read this. People, yeah, like it's an AI chatbot or something that's interviewing you, and I guess depending on your answers, they kind of put you in a certain, oh, this is appropriate, this is not. Some AI robot, which, they played Jeopardy and won. Didn't the robot win on Jeopardy a few years ago? So it's just weird, it makes me feel very alienated.
Well, the hard part is, and I've just recently encountered this because I have a Google account and I have my own YouTube channel too, and I was like promoting it and it didn't promote properly, so I like sent in a complaint to Google, but it's like there are no human beings at Google. So you send in a complaint, it goes into some kind of system and it's all answered based on algorithms. So it's like, what I worry about is the same thing with the AI. It's all these algorithms. So like, does it pick up the nuances? Does it pick up the experience in the individual's voice? Does it pick up, the direct eye contact and the other things that you want to see that go on in an interview? Or is it simply just doing a rote yes, no to each of these quantifying items?
Cold air, as you were saying earlier, cold air. It's like, ah.
And cold air is dismissive. And
Right.
cold air doesn't.
Unemotional.
Yeah, and it can miss the whole picture. Very easily. It can get caught up because it can get nitpicky on what the facts are, but not see like a larger theme going on.
Yeah.
Process. And I mean, I think and not even a lot of human beings have that ability to synthesize on that level. So it's not, I'm not blaming AI in that way, but it's like that's unusual even for human beings.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been really awesome. I'm so glad we had this walk together. It was definitely overdue. I always love hearing everything you have to say. It's such a joy.
You're such a beautiful being, and thank you. I love watching your shows and the talks, and just such. It's a great. Thank you for sharing your light and your beauty with everyone, and letting this unfold and supporting and being of service. That's what we're here for. So thank you for having me.
That's what we're here for. Yay! We're all in this together. Nobody is alone. You can always talk to Michael, myself, Irlianna at StarSoundAstrology.com, and Michael, your email address is
Michael@coremichael.com.
Coremichael, C-O-R-E, coremichael.com. Yes. And so, yeah, we are here for you. So, yeah. All right. So, and moving forward, we'll definitely just keep on, I guess, to wrap up our talk about the Mars, Saturn, Uranus T square is, keep your cool, be yourself, but keep your cool. And I don't know, anything else you want to share that's coming up for you that's what came in this moment.
I think it's really beautiful for you to say that, because what we've got is we've got Mars in Leo, which is fire, and we've got Saturn in Aquarius, which is air. Fire and air together can really blow one another up. We had a president, we had the last 4 years of someone who's really great at blowing up the airwaves and everything. And then we've got Uranus in Taurus, and that's Earth. Like having a bull with a horsefly chasing it in a china cabinet. You don't know what the heck's going to happen, right? So it's like just whatever you can do to realize that, it's kind of powder keg area, and things can get accelerated very quickly. So whatever we can do to take a breath, to take a step back, to just not take the bait.
And maybe that Uranus square in Taurus is like, oh, go back to the earth and look at it differently. Like, instead of like something to be stepped on and used, is like, maybe we just sit on the ground and do some earthing. I mean, that would be one possible way of
gardening, right?
Gardening. Yeah. I love gardening. And I have this thing called a tower garden, and you talked about, this is so Uranus and Taurus. It opened up for me when Uranus was in Aries, but it's certainly, it uses like 5% of the water that normally you'd need to water that many plants in a garden. And it runs on, it can run on a solar panel, actually, not just, it could be off the grid with it's very small amount of electricity to automatically water the plants, but it's so marvelous. But yeah, anything that will connect us with nature in a new and innovative way would be a good, perhaps a good RX for this transit. So yay, thank you, Michael. Yay, 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 yay. Okay, well, all right, everybody. Well, this has been episode 111 of StarSound Speaks, StarSound Astrology. And I thank you all for listening, and stay safe, and take that high road, and yeah, we have to just stay in our hearts. So thank you all for listening. See you next time. Take care now.